Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my week, what is this, week 34 of 2022. Wow, we're in our last, or we just had our last full week of August. We're going into September. That's crazy. I'm very excited for September and some things that are going to happen, places that I'm going to go. It's going to be great. We're going to start off right away, right quick with my member and Patreon shout outs because we have some books to talk about. Now, quite a few of these books are rereads because it was Patreon reread week for me. That kind of always happens. The second to last week, I make sure that I get all of my patron books annotated and sent out. But I also decided to go on a trip down memory lane that I should not have done, but I don't regret because it was very good for my mental health and it made me very happy. So is it really a waste of time, you know? But I think some of the books I'm talking about today they won't surprise you if you know me. But if you are here for my romance content, you might be like, Jen, what were you reading? But I was very surprised by this. Okay, I'm talking in circles. Let's get to the point. We have quite a few shout outs to mention because I made a couple interesting videos this week and they really brought us some new viewers and some new channel members and supporters. So first off, thank you to everyone who showed so much love for my big dick video. I did not realize that it was going to be like my best video I've put out in a couple months. I know you guys like my oddly specific recommendations because, you know, the point of me making them is that there aren't any other videos that exist. I also did a pegging recommendation, which didn't get as many views, but the people who did watch it were very thankful because it's not something that they find recommended. And in fact, if you search for pegging romances on YouTube, there's only one other video, and that's from Happy for Now from Izzy over there. Otherwise, all you get is instructional videos. So people looking for romances that have that, they're kind of SOL. So I hope you enjoy that. But anyway, it ended up bringing me a lot of new followers for making that video. And I mean, I'm absolutely thrilled. You know that I love to be known for those videos. And to show your support, we have 4 new Patreons who joined. And we have Tammy. Thank you so much for joining, Tammy. We have Sarah Freeman, Care Petit, sorry if I say that wrong, I'm always worried about how I say your name, but who is also a channel member as well. And then Angie Santiago, they all joined my Patreon, which is just so kind. And I actually hit my final goal that I had set in my Patreon, which obviously I was making that goal in the beginning, not knowing what I would actually need. So I definitely still have some way to go for being at a comfortable place with everything. We're still in kind of the lean years, but you know, for starting a small business, as we would call it with this, I'm doing very well. You know, I'm doing very well and I'm very pleased. And I'm just so thankful for you guys jumping on board. But because of that, all of my patrons, I'm going to have a special live show for them. And then the new channel members that I got is Randy Smith, who joined at the Faded Friend level. Hey, Randy, thank you so much for being here. Then we have Carissa T and Melissa Longo, who joined at the Dedicated Diva level, which means they get access to all my videos early. They get the weekly wrap-ups a day early. They get those fun videos like Big Dick and pegging videos ahead of everyone. So definitely check that out. I have support that ranges from every level and what I think are some great benefits and better access to me. Anyway, so there we go. That's enough of the self-promotion for this one because like I said, we have some interesting things to talk about, some very exciting things and some of that. So some of these we'll be able to go through pretty quickly because they're rereads, but in case this is the first video that you've seen me do of these, probably should have said this at the beginning, I do a weekly wrap up every week. I have for over 2 years where I talk about every book that I've read, whether I'm rereading it, whether it's an arc, whether it's a DNF, I talk about them on my channel. Because when I do monthly wrap ups and things like that, I don't have time to talk about 50 plus books in a monthly wrap up. It's just too much, because I like to really dig into the books that I'm loving. So yeah, this week, as I said, since it was a Patreon reread week, we're going to go through those, and then we're going to talk about the series that I decided to reread and binge. And if you're on my Instagram, which I highly suggest you follow me on Instagram, that's where I'm able to interact the easiest with people and chat with people there. We'll talk about that. So I reread Ruthless Creatures, and I annotated a copy of it. Actually annotated my copy up there because one of my patrons wanted this one. Of course, the Queens and Monsters series is very popular, one for people to pick for me to annotate because they know how much I love it. So there's only been 1 month that I haven't annotated one of these, and this is like, I think, the only one that I hadn't reread and annotated. So we did this. If you don't know about Queens and Monsters, maybe you don't. This is a mafia series. I think most of them are age gaps, but this one is like a neighbor scenario. So we have Natalie, who she lost her fiance 5 years ago. He just disappeared, and she's trying to move on from him. She has a best friend named Sloane, who Sloane gets her own book, and she's my favorite ever. I love her so much. But she is being encouraged to move on, and she gets this new neighbor. His name is Cage. He is very sexy, deep voice, growly, seems to be very wealthy, and they have this crazy connection. And he keeps showing up and turning around, and their connection keeps growing. But it's very clear there's something sketchy going on about him. And the more we find out about him, the more they're drawn together. The more we realize that Natalie's in more danger than she could have expected or like thought she was. And this really starts off an amazing series. Like, I love every book in this series so much. So it was really fun to get to reread it. This is very sexy. This is very fun. There are toys used in this one. I was really sensitive to like toys being used because that is a video that I want to make eventually. Like, I had some people comment on my pegging video that, can you make one just about toys? I'm like, I'm working on it. But I don't just want to recommend like the same ones, because a lot of times it's the same books over and over that have toys in them. And I want to find ones that other people haven't recommended. So I will get to it. It takes me a while. But anyway, so I reread this. Of course, this is a 5-star book for me. Absolutely love it. Yeah, this is pretty. This is my signed copy that I got from JT. It's really beautiful. So yeah, we reread this little gem, and that was fun. Then I reread Lifeblood by Amara Ray. I have a pretty bookmark with this one. Actually, 2 of my patrons picked this book, so I got to do a reread of this, which was fun. The first time I read this, I think, was back in February or March was when I read Lifeblood. And this entire series will be out by the end of the year, so it's kind of cool. Amara is on, book number 5 is coming out in September. How cool is that? I cannot wait. But this is about a coven of witches who they each have a different power, and they're all hybrids, which means they're hated by the other witches because they hate hybrids. They think they're abominations. And so it's these 6 women. And we have Colette, who is a healer. She's a life witch. She does have a very dark side to her power, but she is a healer, and she's very integral to her coven. And she gets kidnapped in the beginning of this, and she gets kidnapped by a group of warlocks. And the warlocks have hired this man named Mackay, who is like a torturer, and he's very good at getting information out of people. And he's supposed to torture Colette for information of how to break this like boundary spell that is around the witches' territory, because they want to destroy them and they need to be able to break that. And Colette is the one that he wants, like, this bad warlock wants tortured. The thing is, when Mackay goes to torture her, he realizes that she's his mate. And it's extremely difficult for him to hurt her. Doesn't mean he doesn't find ways to do it. But the more that he is around her and the more that he's trying to get this information, the deeper he's falling under her spell. And not in a spell that she cast on him, but just in a spell as, like, they're meant to be together. So any harm he's doing to her, he's doing to his other half. And that's not a smart thing to do. Let's just say that. This is the beginning of the Immortal Coven series, and I've loved every book. They're very wild, a little bit wacky. Like, that's the thing I say when I rec these. Like, they are heavy. They're triggers. Amara beautifully has in the fronts of all of hers, she has a note for readers where she kind of will like explain the triggers, but also in like a fun way explain what's going on so that you know what you're getting into. But there is this like little bit of tinge where it's also a little bit wacky at the same time. It's hard to explain. Like, there are very heavy things you'll see in here. There are triggers for a reason, but then there's this little bit of ridiculousness that makes it very charming at the same time. So I just love these. Like, this first one was a 4-star for me because it was a little like clunky to get through some of that, you know, backstory and things that are very important. But when I reread this book, I was now more keyed into those things because some of the things laid out in this book we're just getting to in the later ones. So I highly recommend the series. They're all on KU and they're very sexy too. I'll say that. There is some fun like kinky stuff in here. There's blood play, and there is spankings and ropes and lots of fun things going on with this. So I adore this series so much. Like, this one was a 4-star, but pretty much all the rest of the books have been 5 stars for me. So it was really a good time to revisit this to like kind of prepare me for some future. All right, then I read Love on the Brain by Hazelwood. This book just came out on Tuesday. I was a bad girl and I waited till Tuesday to read it. I really needed the audiobook for this, I will say. This book is very smart, just as in like, this is a woman in academia who is a scientist and a data analyzer, and she's very clever and her knowledge is vast. And I think that Allie does a great job showing that. And I know there's been some weird hate going around for this. I don't understand it. Like, I try to only be on TikTok to post fun stuff, to uplift authors, to do some funny like ranking of things, and then I get in and get out of it, you know? I get in, get out of it. And so I don't fully understand why, and I saw people like mocking the the ads for this. There was someone who was saying, is this author really advertising this way? I don't know. Putting all that aside, I'm judging this book on what it was. I read The Love Hypothesis. I enjoyed it. It was like a 4-star book for me. I had fun. It was not as spicy as everyone was like, oh, this is so spicy. And I was like, it's not. But it was cute. I didn't have problems with it. And with Love on the Brain, I had a lot of that cuteness and things I was liking. And it was a little bit steamier. Still like a 2.5 on the Jenn scale. We're not anywhere like way off the charts or anything. This hero was slightly less grumpy than in the other. And again, like, I don't think these are actually like, I didn't see anywhere they connected. It's just more like the theme of what the author's going for, you know, is the nerdy parts of it. But I was really looking too for any direct. So did anybody find any? I didn't see any. I haven't had anyone point it out. This isn't book 2 in a series. You can read this never having touched the other one. But yeah, what is it about? So that's kind of the thing, is that our main character, her name is Bee, and she is getting sent to NASA to work on a project, and she runs into some trouble because the person she's supposed to be a co-lead with is her like nemesis, or what she believes is her nemesis, because they've known each other for a long time. He's always been very standoffish with her and ignoring her, and you know, won't look her in the eye. He's this big girthy guy. There definitely was like big dick stuff coming from Levi for sure. I think I'm just really sensitive to noticing big dicks now after making that video. But anyway, she very much is like, he's gonna ruin everything, and there's a lot of problems she has getting her project off the ground, and like she's getting blamed for it by her boss, but then like she's not able to make any headway with like Levi's boss. So there's all that stuff parts going on. And as it was with The Love Hypothesis, that was a bit of like a gatekeeping element to me. Not the author purposely doing it. My own gatekeeping. Because for me and my brain, the first 40% of this was so focused on the science and the work dynamic and the other characters outside of Levi and B that I was a bit bored. Like, I like my romances to be more focused on the couple that's going to get together, you know? And yeah, but really, like, it was a fun time. I waited till like release day because I got the audiobook. The audiobook was fun. I enjoyed listening to that, and I listened to that while I was getting a bunch of work done. So it was a great thing to do. And so it ended up being a 4-star read for me. I haven't even looked at my notes at all. It ended up being a 4-star read for me. It was 2.5 on the spice scale. This did have more than one sex scene, and it had some very like intimate sex scenes in just the intensity bouncing off of them. And this is a pining hero. This is a long-term pining hero. You know, those of us who read lots of romance, we will be keyed into what's going on with this Levi, like, pretty much right away. We have his number. We understand his obsession. We're here for it. So like, a lot of people are going to think this is sweet and cute, and it was. The conflict at the end and all that pizzazz, like, I wasn't here for that. But also because this was a contemporary, like, traditionally published book, like, I knew what I was in for. And it didn't bother me that much because it didn't last long at all. Like, it didn't last long at all. And there was other conflict going on besides just like B and Levi, like them having issues there. So it was a good time. So yeah, it was 4 stars. Then I actually have a fanfic to talk about. I was able to finish a fanfic. So because I knew I was going to have a really tight schedule this month, and I still do. I have 4 days left of the month, and I still have stuff that I'm not done with, but such is life. That's how it goes. I wanted to be reading a fanfic, and so I started reading it at nights, and I was reading a little bit every night. So I read Revelations by the Jade Alcor. I think this was recommended by one of my besties on here. I can't remember, or if I had like searched the pairing or not, because this was a Lucius and Hermione. So I think it might be from my friend Ash. Ash, you'll have to tell me if you recommended this one. I assume that you did. But maybe not. But yeah, this was a Lucius and Hermione, and Hermione gets asked by who does she get asked by? I think she gets asked by Andromeda Tonks. I'm not sure who asked her, but she gets asked to look into this case, this certain scenario, and she runs into Lucius when she's supposed to do it, because Lucius is actually doing kind of like a work program at Hogwarts. Like, he's working with Snape to like work off some time. It's kind of like a community service thing, and they end up, bouncing off of each other, and he, takes her to the libraries and all these things. Anyway, we won't go into the details of this plot. Like, this was fun. This was cute. When their sexual relationship starts, it is so good. And then the secrets that were revealed in this one, like what the reveals were in this one, were really interesting. Like, I was like, ooh, didn't expect that to happen. Didn't expect that. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 3 on my spice scale. Okay. Now we're going to talk about, you ready? We're going to talk about the do-over. All right, I'll move over even so we can put this up. So the do-over is coming out on the 30th. It comes out on Tuesday, and the ARCs were available on NetGalley, as they have been with all the books in this series. They have went up on NetGalley. These are published through Amazon's publishing company, so a lot of people are able to get ARCs of these, and they're like an automatic acceptance one. And that's how I first read The Takeover. Anyway, we won't do too much backstory with this. So first I'm going to do some non-spoilery stuff, and then I'm going to get into some spoilers with this, because I kept my Goodreads review to like 3 things I didn't like and 3 things that I liked. That's how I do it when I have an arc that I really don't enjoy, but I don't want to be trashing it, because I do respect T.L. Swan. obviously. She wrote my favorite book ever. But I didn't really love the Casanova. I mean, I gave it 5 stars because there was nothing objectively wrong with it. But with the do-over, I think there are objectively things wrong with it. And because you guys trust me to always be honest, and I expect that of myself, and I wouldn't, like, no author, no matter who they are to me, if I see issues as big as this, would I hide them? You know, I would never hide them. And this one has some glaring character issues to me, and like pacing issues to me, and a almost irredeemable, unlikable hero to me. Are you ready for this? More so than Jameson, okay? Like, I give Jameson shit, but it's mostly just because, like, I like to. And a lot of people love The Stopover, okay? The Stopover is a fine book. It's just compared to The Takeover, there's no comparison to me. So what's happening in the do-over? Like I said, I'm keeping this non-spoiler, and then if you want to hear me rant, I will, because I've been saving it, and I'm ready to do it, okay? I'm ready to rant about it, because this is my safe place, and this is where I get to rant about it. When I put my reviews out in a public square, I try to be a little more, I mean, I know this is a public square, it's my YouTube. I have 15,000 followers, like, I understand it's public, but still, if an author comes into my space, that's their choice. But if I'm putting it out there, I try to be, you know, I try to be professional, because I review books for people all the time. Anyway, you don't need to know that. You know that about me. I still have my beautiful picture collage that you guys gave me, the things, like, maybe you don't know this, but for Christmas last year, sorry, now we're doing a side note. At the end of the year, I did an end of the year survey to find out what people were liking about what I was doing. And I also asked people to list a word that comes to mind when they think of me. And then I made a word picture with the words. And right in the middle of this, it says honest. Right in the middle, like, I had by far the most thing people said was honest. And I'm going to be that no matter who the author, whether it's my bestie or whether it's an author that I've been loving for a long time or whether it's one of my dear friends, like, I'm going to be honest. So anyway, what is this book about? All right. So this book is about Christopher Miles, our baby Miles, and he is told that he's spoiled by his brothers, like not his brother spoiling him, but he's told he's spoiled, and he's very offended by that. And they're like, well, it's more like you're entitled. He's like, the brothers are like, it's a fact. Like, we've always had money, you know, it's not that you haven't, like, it's not that you don't work for what you have, but also you were given every advantage and you're just here, and like, you just fuck whoever you want. You've never had a serious relationship. You have all the toys you could want, and they say it in a way like they're not trying to put him down. They're like teasing him, and he takes it too far. So this, that, and the other thing, he decides he's going to take a do-over year. He's going to take a break from work, take a sabbatical, he's going to go backpacking through Europe. And his brothers are like, that's way more than you think. So again, this, that, and the other thing, he gets the stuff he needs, he decides where he's going, he heads off. First stop is Barcelona. First night, he ends up getting robbed by a woman who he's going back to have a one-night stand with her. She is ungroomed at all, and so he is like freaked out by her pussy hair and by her armpit hair. And so he runs into the bathroom, and then he makes excuses to leave, and she steals his wallet. And when he like goes to the bank, then like his account's been emptied. Now for this, like, he was only given $1,500 to make this year through, and anything else to supplement, he was going to need to like work for it, because that was part of the do-over. He wasn't just going to be able to dip into piles of money and like travel in style. Like, he's staying in hostels, and he's going to meet friends to travel with along the way, people who don't know who he is. And so his brothers do encourage him to like use a fake name, just so that, you know, he doesn't get kidnapped and used for ransom, which is a legit thing. Like, literally kidnapping is a market in other countries. So not a bad idea, right? It's not horrible. So, but anyway, gets robbed, and he then needs to like get a job. And when he's working this, like, he needs to pay off the cab company that is driving him away from this woman's house, because he doesn't have his wallet or his money, and he didn't, you know, wasn't prepared for that. So he first does like a weekend working for this cab company to pay off his fare, and then when that's happening, he meets Hayden, who actually sees him having a very bad day at work, and she's going to be staying in the same hostel. Now, Hayden, our heroine, she is a farm girl from, you know, the States. I forget, like, which state she's from, or, like, whatever. And she is, like, 25, and she's going to take this year of traveling, too. And the way that it's going to work for them is, like, she's staying at the same hostel. She happens to be put in the same room with Kristoff and a couple other people, and they all, like, click, and they're going to, like, travel together. But Hayden, she just thinks he's kind of a tool right away. He is a tool. He acts like a tool. The first thing she sees about him is his big dick, because he gets home from his bad day and he has, like, vomit on him. So he just goes into his room, which is everyone's room, and takes off his clothes. And so she sees his big schlong, and she's like, I'm going to stay far away from him. And so what begins is the first, like, 45% of this book is them getting to know each other, and her being like, sex means something to me. I've only ever been with one person. We've seen this scenario before. He's like, I can't even tell you how many people I've been with. Sex is just a bodily function, blah, blah. And she's like, well, that's cool, but that's not what it is for me. And so what? Like, I'm not just going to sleep with whoever. It's going to mean something to me. And he's like, well, but you should let me fuck you. But anyway, even despite him being a pig, they're going to be traveling together. And so we, like, this first 45% is them, like, becoming really good friends. And we get to see them slowly becoming close to each other. Not without its bumps and bruises, though. And what else do I want to say in a non-spoiler part about this? So yeah, the book is broken up with when they're traveling, and then when they go home and Hayden finds out who he is. Because yes, that entire year of travel, he never says who he is. He doesn't give any hints that he's from a wealthy family or that he himself has billions or any of that. Like, she thinks maybe he was an entitled, like, rich kid, but not like that, you know? And while she's falling in love with Chris, who's this world traveler, she doesn't know he's Christopher Miles, and he ambushes her with that. So that's going to be enough of the non-spoiler parts. I will tell you, I gave this a 3-star for my review. You guys know I very much try to rate arcs a 3 or higher. Like, a 3 means I did not like this. If I was just rating it how I wanted to, it would be a 2 on my rating scale. But I do that with all arcs. Like, if they're okay, they're a 4. If I love them, they're a 5 or a 6. If I don't like them, they're a 3. A 3 is the lowest that I will rate a book and still rate it when it's an arc. This was a 3 on the spice scale. This actually was her least spicy book in the series, besides it having, like, size difference stuff and it being very much Chris has the biggest cock of all the Miles. It's a thing. And anytime they're having it, it's very much like, oh, she's going to be able to take all of him, which normally I'm here for. Okay, right? Literally made a video called Big Dicks. But I despised Kristoff and his big dick so much. So anyway, if you still want to read this for yourself, I know I'm not making it very positive. I should tell you a few of the positive parts. I got to see Claire and Tristan. They're having their 3rd baby girl together. So now Tristan has his 3 adopted boys and 3 girls. There's a family dinner where we see most of the Miles and their families there, and it's amazing. That is a squirrel. Go away. I have my door open, so I don't want the squirrel to come in. And those moments, like, I post on Instagram, literally, I burst into tears when we got that, because it was finally something that was, like, making me smile when I hadn't smiled much at all. So there's that. You know, there's that. Sorry, I had to turn the air on because it was going well, but now the sun's come out and it's heating up in here. So, spoilers now, because I'm going to tell you the things I didn't like, all right? And they were plentiful. Kristoff starts out as a douche, and then we see some things where we're maybe supposed to believe that they're character growth, but where he ends the story, I don't believe that he's changed. He's entitled asshole the entire time. There are sweet moments along the way, okay? Like there are. Those times when they are together, like they start doing this thing where they will like sleep together and spoon together. And yeah, there's a cute moment when she has her period and he's like, you know, you're telling me. I was like, seen it before, okay? And I've loved it better by other people. Like, just because you brought periods into this book, TL, which TL usually will show people's bodily functions, which is great, but you don't get extra points this time, all right? You don't get extra points this time for it, because I didn't want Hayden to be with Christopher when this was over, all right? I really did not, okay? More so than Elliot pissed me off did Christopher Miles, okay? Number one, he keeps his secret the entire year, okay? The entire year. There is a time when they go from friends to dating during this year, okay? There's the first couple months where they're becoming friends. Then they have a mutual getting each other off night, and Christopher goes back to London. He goes back to London after they get each other off. He literally white fangs her to a different country. And what does Hayden do? Number one, she knows why he ran. She knows that his family didn't have paperwork they needed him to sign and he needed to leave. She knows that. And he needs to go to another country and talk with his brothers about if he can like commit to this girl or not before going back, like, and then being like, let's give it a try. He white fangs her to another country. And then at this point would have been a good point to tell her who he is now that you've started to date, because she already loves you or likes you a lot without knowing you have money or without knowing any of those things. But no, he continues to keep it a secret. He works different. You know, what they'll do is they'll like travel to different parts of Europe during the week, and then on the weekends they'll work at this like bar and they'll do jobs. And they end up getting a job at one point in one of the places working on a yacht for a week, and the yacht ends up being is it Spencer or Garcia? I think it's Mr. Spencer's. And so like Mr. Masters and Mr. Garcia and Mr. whatever, they like all show up on this boat, and he tells them, he's like, you can't tell her who I am. And so it's this absolutely ridiculous night of him working on the yacht and having to wear these like slutty outfits, and the guys like make Chris have to like rub their feet so that they'll keep his secret. And it's supposed to be funny, but all I'm thinking the whole time is I'm like, you're lying to this woman, and each day, each month you go on, I hate it. So then we're gonna fast forward some more, because obviously like sex was a big part of like their first conversations, where she was like, it's important to me to have a connection with someone, and he doesn't understand that part of it. You know, he's just like, it's just a physical thing, whatever. We've heard that stuff before. When it's time for them to go back, like they're in love, and she's said, you know, he's like, would you be willing, you know, do you want to live together? Do you want to be together? And she's like, yeah, I do. And she's like, I'd love to go visit my family, but then like we can be wherever you need to be. But she thinks he's a janitor at a school. First he said he was a teacher, and then when he was going to tell her who he was, he starts by saying, I'm not who you think I am. And she starts panicking. He's like, I lied about being a teacher. I'm actually a janitor. So he says he's a janitor, and she forgives him for that. She's like, oh honey, I don't care if you're a janitor. So she has his like sympathy, because she thinks he was too ashamed to say that he was a janitor. All right. So then they're going to be going back, and his car picks them up, and they take him to the airport, and it's a private plane, and he literally dropped this on top of her. So she realizes that this is his plane. This is his limo. That's his private driver. And when they get to his house, it's a penthouse at the top of this like skyscraper in New York. And then he says, actually, this is just one of my homes. I actually live in London, and you're gonna move to London with me. And she's like, what? I don't want to live in London. I want to, you know, I thought you were. And he's like, well, you said you'd live wherever with me. Are you saying because I'm rich you don't love me as much as if I was poor? And like immediately guilt tripping. And this bitch boy doesn't know a volume below yelling, okay? I wrote it in my review. This was me being sassy. Anytime there was any kind of an argument, the dialogue tags, like I'm telling you, if you read this, you're gonna notice it now, and I'm not even sorry. Anytime there's even a little bit of like, we need a discussion, the dialogue tags immediately go to Christopher yelled, or he screamed, or he raised his voice. He immediately is yelling and whining and making her feel bad and saying, you made me these promises, you did this. And when she says, but like you lied to me, he's like, well, it's because I'm rich, you're like prejudiced against me. And she's like, no, I'd be pissed if someone lied to me for a year, no matter what it was about, but you lied about this. So he ends up convincing her to give him 3 months because he has to go to London to work for 3 months. It's his busy time. He's been gone all this time. He has to. And he's like, give me 3 months. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. And I'm skipping over quite a bit because I'm not going to go every beat by beat. I'm talking about the things that piss me off the most. So she agrees. And we get to have some fun, like, you know, he takes her shopping for things. He's like, I'll get you whatever you need. But she quickly finds that she can't really leave the apartment because there's paparazzi everywhere. She has to have a guard and a driver, and he's, you know, throwing money at her. She can't, you know, like she doesn't have a job. She's become his mistress. She's not his partner. She's become his mistress, and a kept one at that, who he will work 18 hours a day, come home, fuck her, give her snuggles, and then be gone. And she has to talk through his assistant. Thankfully, his assistant is actually wonderful and is constantly being like, Christopher, what do you, like, she's so lonely. And we skip ahead like a month, and the woman is so homesick and depressed that she's crying all day. She'll go to the park with her guard and just sit and cry. And Christopher, this motherfucking baby who has to have things his way, when he's talking with his brothers about like, she's so depressed and like, she's gonna have to get over it. She has to get through this because I can't, you know, we can't leave London whenever she feels homesick. Like, she's gonna have to get over it. And the brothers are like, are you sure? Like, are you sure that's the way you want to go? And he's like, no, I'm right. Like, she said we'd be together no matter what. This comes with the territory. I have to be here. And if she's not okay with it, like, you know, whatever. And then he gets a call from the driver, who's also her bodyguard. And he says, sir, she has been crying all day. Like, it's not good. And so Christopher, he drops what he's doing, goes and finds her. She's sitting in a park crying, and he's like, okay, baby, tell me what it is. So we think he's going to be compassionate here. Don't we want that? Don't we want that hurt comfort where like she's just feeling overwhelmed? And she says, I need to go home for a visit. You know, like, all I'm seeing, I can either be in an apartment or I have guards, and I don't see you. And you know this. And he immediately is like, you said you'd give me 3 months. You're backing out of your deal. You couldn't even give me 3 months. And again, immediately yelling. He is immediately yelling. I am not kidding you. I would show you screenshots if I cared enough. And she literally, you can tell this woman is depressed. And she has almost like brain fog because she is so just like, she knew this one man. She's grieving the life she thought she'd have. She isn't at the farm where she wanted to be. She isn't like starting this life with this man she knew. She's been thrust into this life, and then she doesn't even have Christopher with her. Like, she's living alone in this fancy apartment because she's only there to fuck her and leave, you know? And she questions him on that. She's like, so I'm like your fuck girl, basically, because I live alone and you pay for my everything, and then, you know, you stop in, get a blowjob or something, and you're gone. And he's like, well, that's just being unrealistic. This is the busy time. You said you'd give me 3 months. And she's like, I don't want to live in the city. And he's like, I have to live in the city. And she's like, I want to go home. I need to go visit my family. And he's like, you know what? If you can't give me 3 months, if you leave, this is it. So this is the hill he's going to die on for this, okay? This is the hill he's going to die on. And it gets worse, okay? It gets worse. It gets worse. He he says, I can't do long distance. It won't work. And she's like, why? And he's like, because I need sex. Because I need sex. That actually comes out of his mouth. Okay, I'm not making it up. He's like, I need sex. And if we're not going to be together, this is it. And then he pulls out a card because, again, I told you I skipped quite a bit. But, like, he has talked with her dad. And, like, they went to visit her family before they moved to London. And the dad, you know, they grow on each other a little bit. And the dad is like, she will put other people's needs first. So I need you to promise me that you'll look out for her needs, and because otherwise, like, she'll look out for yours and not for herself. And she is telling him what she needs. She's saying what she needs. Like, she's depressed and brokenhearted, and, like, he just is making it all about himself and how she won't try for him, you know? And then he says, I need sex. And he's like, it's best if you leave now, because if we wait and you're not going to want this, like, I can't change my life. And so she's like, so you didn't really mean you'd give me 3 months. You wanted me to just get used to it. And he's like, well, I thought that you would. I can give you everything. And she's like, you've lied to me about what everything is. Everything was us together, like, probably scraping by. She didn't know he was wealthy. And he's just so fucking fucked in the head that he can't realize this. So then he's like, I'm taking you home right now. So they go back home. He immediately has emotionally shut down with her. He won't talk about it anymore. He won't cuddle her. And she's starting to panic. And she's like, Christopher, like, I don't have to leave this quick. We can talk about it. And he's like, no, we're just going to cut it off right now. He won't even drive her to the airport. He puts her in a car and he sends her away. And I was so fucked. And the way that Hayden rationalizes this, so she does the work for us, which is fuck off with this, okay? Fuck off with this. Well, she's thought about it. She's like, I understand he doesn't mean he needs sex, that he only wants me for sex. He means that the emotional connection we've gotten from this is something he's never experienced before. And if I take that away, he'll feel abandoned. This is me leaving him. And I'm like, is it? Like, he hasn't told you any of that. He hasn't seen a therapist and told you this is what it is. You're doing the emotional lifting for him. This is an abusive relationship. Hayden is rationalizing his fucked up mentality. She's rationalizing stuff for him. And I'm like, this is an abusive relationship. What are we doing? Okay? Fast forward, let's keep going with this. So, again, there's some stuff that I had skipped. There's this young boy. His name is Eduardo. One of the best parts of the book, if you want to read this, like, Taylor Swan does do great things with kids and adults in her books. She just does. She writes family shit really well. Like, obviously, that's why I love The Takeover. We're still not done. I gotta land the plane, Helen. We gotta land the plane here. He ends up not hearing from Eduardo for a while. He goes back to Barcelona, finds out that Eduardo's had his phone stolen, and actually, he doesn't have a family. He's living on his own. Christopher wants to bring him back to London and take care of him, help him get schooling, all this stuff. If you don't have time for a girlfriend, how are you going to have time for a kid? Anyway, also simultaneously, I think it's been like 6 weeks, Hayden hasn't been able to get in contact with Eduardo. Since she's so depressed, she's like, how about I go back to Barcelona? Eddie needs me. So she goes there. So they both ended up in Barcelona, all right? Finding out what's happening with Eddie. They both feel horrible about how things went. She says, I'll stay with Eddie until his paperwork gets through. You go back to London, and I'll stay with Eddie, because it's going to take like 6 to 8 weeks for the paperwork to go through, for Eddie to be able to move to London and be there. And, like, Hayden and him, through their daily conversations, end up realizing how much they still love each other. And she's like, I could live in London. Let me come. I'll help take care of Eddie. And he's like, if you're going to come, you can't come for Eddie. I mean, that's a good reason, but you need to come for me. And she's like, I want to. She's like, I realized that I didn't give it a chance. It was a shock. Mostly what it is I needed time. And he's like, I understand. I was really irrational too. I love you. Come back. So, yes, we all moved there. Guess what? He buys them a house in the country with land so that she can have the farm that she wants to have in a whole nother country where it's rainy all the time and it's difficult to grow shit. And they're going to be Eddie's family. And then it's over. Okay? There, I rushed through the end. There was nothing redeemable about this guy except that he would adopt this kid and take care of him. And that was it. He was a manipulator. He lied to her from day one. And At any point in 365 days, he could have started saying who he was and given her time. I know it's supposed to be the shock value for the book, but mixed with everything else, he's the most spoiled. His brothers were absolutely right. He's spoiled, entitled, rich fuckboy who makes this woman fall for him by being sweet and then rips the rug out from underneath her, doesn't see to her needs ever until the very end of the book, lies to her, manipulates her emotionally, physically, all that stuff, and I hate him. I do want to rate this lower than 3 stars, but like I said, if you check out my Goodreads review, I try to encapsulate that into the main feelings I was having, but I'm so furious that I almost never want to read another book by T.L. Swan, because what was this, okay? The next book coming by T.L. Swan is Miles High Ever After, which I obviously want to read for Claire and Tristan, and honestly, Jameson moved up my list after this. Didn't think that he would. He's definitely grown up a lot. He has lots of kids now, and him and Emily seem great. I want to see how he's doing, right? I want to see how Elliot and his goat are doing, sure. But Kristoff can get punted off a cliff. I can't think of another hero who's pissed me off this much and wasn't like a dark romance something. So we've spent half of this video on that. But like I said, I had to get this out there. I don't understand what this was and why TL's like, I think Kristoff is my favorite hero. I know they're supposed to say that about their newest hero, but my dad would say, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining, okay? Who was this entitled fuckboy in comparison to Tristan? And the comparisons between Kristoff and Tristan in this book? No. Don't think so. Okay, I'm done. Moving on. I probably will have to cut some of that out because I just got very heated. But, ugh. And when I was talking with friends about this, I left the book, like I always leave a book a little bit happier than I'm expecting. So it's like, oh, maybe this is 4 stars. And then I was talking it through with my friends and I'm like, no. And it would be a disservice to tell people that I gave this 4 stars. Because you guys would never trust another recommendation that I gave. But anyway, all right, what else did we read? Okay, yes, okay. So then I reread Wolf Gone Wild. We won't talk about this one too much. I'll show off the pretty art. This was for a patron. This was a 5-star reread. This is about Evie, who is a hexbreaker witch, the first of the Savoy sisters. Well, she's the second oldest with the first book. And Mateo is our werewolf who has a hex on him where he's not able to shift into his lovely wolf whose name is Alpha. And so Alpha has been driving him a little bit crazy in his head. And he begs the Savoy sisters to help him. And so Evie is the one who steps to the plate. And then this becomes like a friends to lovers scenario because they get to know each other. This is delightful. This is very nerdy. This is very fun. This series is starting to gain traction. And I love that. Okay, the 5th book is coming out soon. The audiobook for book 4 will be out in just a couple of weeks. If you're not reading this series, they're all on KU now. They never had been before. They've just been on it for the past like month or 2. You need to gobble this series up, okay? I know this cover looks like YA or fun. These are spicy. This is the lowest spice. They only go up from here. Okay, they just get spicier as we go. But these are adult paranormal romances, okay? These covers are gorgeous. They are adult. They are spicy, okay? They're spicy. Then another book that was new this week I read was Deacon by Kristen Ashley. So, bit of backstory on this book. I just put up a video the other day that was pegging recommendations. I've already mentioned it in this video. And at the end of the video, I had 4 books that I wanted to read that Goodreads said had pegging in them. But I hadn't read them yet. So in the video, I give my recommendations and then I did these. And I asked you guys, like, does this book have pegging? Do you know? Because on a Goodreads list, like, people can put a book as having something and you don't necessarily know if they're telling the truth. So that's why they were like hesitant recommendations. And this one sounded really interesting to me. And so I read it. And first off, I'll say it doesn't have pegging. If you look at the term pegging to mean the woman is wearing a strap on and fucking the guy, I know that there are some alternative ways to explain that. If you look up the term pegging, it says a woman penetrating a man's anus with a dildo. That's what it says when you look up the term. But for some people, it can mean like, well, does it have to be strapped on? Can she be using her hand? Can she be using, I mean, it's using a toy. It's definitely not just using your fingers. But like, does it have to be like on her person? I don't really care like which way, but this one doesn't have either. She doesn't use a dildo on him. She uses a butt plug, but she will like, you know, penetrate him with that and like use that. But that happens in this. And it's pretty good. So if you like toys used or kind of the action of that, it's great. And it's being done to like a dominant man too, because this is a dominant straight man. And so even though when she's like fucking him with this butt plug, like he's the one in charge, and it's so hot. Like it's so hot. But Deacon is this man who he's in a life of crime. We don't learn a ton about Deacon because I haven't read the other books in this series. I dived right into this one to see if it had pegging in it. I will probably read the other books too because it's very interesting. But Cassidy, she owns this group of rental cabins. Deacon, over the past 7 years, has rented cabin number 11 from her, and he has been pining for her the whole time, literally the whole time. And after an incident that happens to some people in one of her cabins, so nothing happens to her, it happens to some people staying there, and they kind of like team up to handle it. He finally like tips his cards and says he's been into her this whole time, and he's always hoped that she would have a man so that he could back off, because he doesn't want to taint her by the life of crime that he lives. And slowly through this book, he's like, if things are good between us, I will leave this life of crime so that I can be with you. And yeah, and they end up slowly introducing BDSM into that relationship, and he says, anything I do to you, you can do to me, and that leads to the butt stuff, which was really good, because one of the things Deacon says is, he's like, when he ties her up the first time, he's like, someday you're gonna do this to me and you'll understand that like you are the one giving the gift. Like when you're tied to this bed and you trust me and let me do, you know, whatever I'm going to do for our mutual pleasure, like you're giving me a gift. Like that's what's happening. And it's really like, it's really beautifully done, because yeah, when he lets her tie him up, she's like, this is a huge gift for this very strong, powerful man to put himself at my mercy. Even if part of that mercy is, you know, fabricated, because he could still like get out, right? So I really liked that. This was, I haven't read a Kristen Ashley like that. I think I've only read 1 or 2 of her books, if I've read any. And this had a very interesting writing style. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was almost lyrical, but also written in like a weird way. But also, I was engrossed in it so quickly, and I do want to read more of these. So there were some pretty dark triggers, mostly for things that Deacon has seen and lived through, particularly something that happened to a lost love of his, or like his dead wife, let's just say that. So he had like, his wife had died, and it had to do with drugs and prostitution, and he, like, that ended up leading him into his life of crime. So know those triggers. But I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. So, and it did have butt stuff and toys. So we'll say that. They were in there. Does it fully fit the term of pegging? No. And I did put a note in my video, but if you like the butt stuff, it's in there. All right. Then I saved the last 3 books for the end, even though I was listening to these books throughout the week. I started listening to one on Tuesday, and I ended up listening to them all through the week because I couldn't stop. And you know what? When I started the first one, I knew that I was going to do that. So if you only like to hear about romance books, you can click off now. But I want to talk a little bit about my favorite audiobooks that I've ever listened to this day, okay? And I've listened to hundreds. And that is the Illuminae Files by Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. And this is a series that I first read because of Booktube, back when I still did like fantasy and YA. I'm going to set this one up. I read these. And I read these because of some of the other Booktube creators who just loved this series so much. And I was like, seems weird. And when I bought one of them and looked inside and I saw all this stuff, I was like, how am I supposed to read these? Well, the thing is, they're best read with the audiobook because you understand how it like plays out then. So again, these are YA sci-fi adventure, but a couple of things that might interest romance readers. Number one, if you have kids that love reading and you're looking for audiobooks to listen to in the car together, I would recommend this for like upper YA, like I would recommend it for like 13 and up could do it. So I guess, yeah, YA. Because there are some like graphic like deaths, but they're not like glorified or anything. But also if you're a romance lover and you listen to a lot of romance audiobooks, the amount of romance narrators who showed up in this series blew my mind. I did not remember them. Like I knew that Shane East was in here under a different name, and he shows up in this book. Did not know that Jacoby Diem, Grip himself, showed up in this one. He shows up in here. And then there are quite a few female narrators and other male narrators that I don't know exactly who they are. Well, Joe Arden, he also showed up in this one because I don't know their YA names, but literally they're all in here. So that was so much fun. I was messaging Crystal while I was reading. I was like, oh my God, this person just showed up. Oh my God, this person showed up. Okay, why you should listen to this. So again, I think this would be great, especially if you have boys that are looking to fall into it. It's great. Actually, each one does have a love story, a small one, because each book has a different couple. That's like the main one. So Illuminae, it's Katie and Ezra. This one is Hannah and Nick, and then this one is Asha and Reese, and this one is like a second chance romance. This one is also a second chance romance, and this one is a mafia romance. I know, I was shocked. I totally forgot it was, but it's sci-fi, so there isn't any steam in them or anything, but like so good. And I know I'm talking long, but you guys love my long videos, so I'm not going to rush this because I talk about this series whenever audiobooks come up, like I really do. And I ended up rereading these because one of my friends was looking for audiobooks to listen to. And I told them, I was like, I know you're looking for romance audiobooks, but these audiobooks are the top tier. Like I said, they are my favorite, okay? The ACOTAR series might end up being close, like the graphic audios, but like these are amazing. They're a full cast, there's sound effects, there are like music that gets put in, like it's amazing. Okay, it's amazing. But the way this starts, so we have this outlaw mining colony where they are mining this type of like, I think it's like a type of fuel that's used. It's like Hermia, I can't remember what they call it or whatever, but it gets bombed by a corporation called Baytech, okay? And they're bombing it because it's their competitor who's running this illegal mining colony, and so they are sure that they'll be able to wipe them out, wipe them off the galaxy, take over the production, and then they'll have destroyed their competition and no one will know about it. Well, it happened to be that a fleet is like protecting this planet, and they happened to be there when this Baytech came in, and so a lot of people on the planet are able to escape into these ships and like take off toward, they're headed towards a jump gate so that they can get back to more of like the main galaxy or whatever, because they're off in the middle of nowhere and they're in a lot of danger. So our scenario is we have Katie and Ezra who have just broken up with each other, okay? Like Katie wants to eventually like move off of this mining colony, and Ezra, they've been dating for a while, and Ezra's like, I can't ever leave. And we don't know why it is, but she's like, fine, whatever. Katie is also, she's a hacker and she's like a girl genius for that. So that's important to know. And when this happens, they have like just broken up and these bombs start falling and they get out of there together. But when they go up into ships, they end up on two separate ships, okay? And over the next like few months, they're slowly making their way towards like this jump gate that they need. And they're being followed not too far behind by one of the ships that had like attacked it. They were able to fix themselves a little bit, and they're coming towards them, and they're going to catch up eventually because they're bigger. So Ezra, he gets drafted into their like fighter pilot school, and Katie, she is a bit of like a troubled youth and stuff, so she just kind of gets kicked around all over the place, and she becomes a part of the hacking community. And then the next step starts happening. It turns out that when this place was bombed, there was actually a biological weapon that was slipped in as part of this like attack, and it's this plague that is turning people into kind of sort of a zombie type, not really, but kind of, and it's slowly taking over one of the ships, like something bad's happening. And the AI on the Alexander, it is called Aiden, Alexander Intelligence Defense Analytic Network, and it's Aiden, AIDAN, Artificial Intelligence Diagnostics Analytic Network, something like that. And its job is to protect the fleet. And when it starts to see that this disease is spreading, it makes some decisions that make things a bit crazy. So that's our first book. Then the next book, Gemina, is at that jump gate that I mentioned, which has some spies working there for Baytech, and they've actually been erasing all of the distress calls that have been coming from the crew that's making their way there. And then we have Hannah, who is the daughter of the captain of this jump gate, Heimdall jump point or whatever, and Nick is part of the mafia that is staying there. It's called the House of Knives, and he is Hannah's dealer. Like, there's this drug that gets grown in the belly of cows there, and they harvest it, and it turns into this drug, and then like Hannah buys it as a party drug. But one day, this group of Baytech, they send in this crew. Let me see if I can find a picture. They send in this crew of 24 operatives who are supposed to take over the waypoint, stay there until our group from this book gets there, and then destroy everything and get out of there. So Hannah, she actually, like, her father has taught her how to fight. She does, like, it's not jujitsu, but she's been trained to fight. She knows how to do, like, she does strategy with her father. Like, her dad is absolutely wonderful. And Katie from this book, her father is actually one of the like tech support people who works here. So Katie's dad works here and is friends with Hannah's dad. So they need to try to, when this place gets attacked, Hannah and Nick are in a position where they're able to help fight back. And then Nick has a cousin, Ella, who's actually, she's disabled. She had a disease when she was, she has a disability where she, it's like a made up disease, but she basically, like, she's in a wheelchair. She needs breathing help, but she's a hacker too. So she helps in that way. And then in Obsidio, we go back to Carenza 4, which is the planet that got attacked. Turns out not all the people on this planet were killed. A lot of them were kept alive to continue mining the whatever the product is. And Baytech needs to use that so that they can restart their jump gate and get out of there. But they're going to liquidate everyone at the end of that time. So we have Reese, who is a, like, unofficial, like, he was kind of like drafted into Baytech, and he's a tech guy who's working on one of their, like, ships, but he gets called in and brought down to Karenza 4 because they have lost a lot of their people, because the people are fighting back on the planet, and so a lot of the Baytech soldiers and stuff are being like X'd out. And then we have Asha Grant, who is Katie's cousin, who is a pharmacy in like tech here, and she's being kept alive to do that. And her and Reese actually dated each other when they were teens, and like it didn't work out, and now her ex-boyfriend is there working for the enemy. And so as Katie and Ezra and Hannah and Nick are making their way back to Karenza 4, they're trying to get in contact with Asha to see if they can stop what's happening and then get the word out. They are putting together the Illuminae files so that they can tell the world what Baytech has done. So I know I just gave a lot of details about this, but there's so much more, I swear. And like, again, if you have young readers who you want them to be excited about books, or you just enjoy an adventure yourself, these books are amazing. They're so much fun. The like audiobooks, like I said, they have all these great things. Like there will be like whisper chats, which will be like IMs. And then there will also be like stuff with where the computer is talking, and there'll be these really like crazy things in here. And there'll be like pictures and stuff. So it's really like, I don't suggest reading this book like on its own, because it's very confusing and like you don't know which information is important and what's not. But if you get the audiobook and you have this book, you can like follow along with it, and it's amazing. Like, honest to goodness, this entire adventure is fantastic. So there we go. That's the end of the week. I know I talked a lot, but I needed to gush after I ranted. I was very disappointed with the do-over. I tried to have mediocre expectations, okay? I tried to keep them real low because I didn't love the Casanova, but it was good still. It just wasn't like my favorite, which is understandable. But I don't know what was going on with the do-over. I mean it. Like, people who are just straight up gushing about it, everyone will have their own opinions. They will. But I don't understand what's lovable about that book. So we're done talking about it. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you to my new supporters and my Patreon peeps. You guys keep me going. Oh, I love you so much. And yeah, I will see you soon. We'll have our August wrap up. We have the Sarah J. Maas along this week. And yeah, that's it. That's stuff we got going on. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.